Ibadan àti Ilorin were the two strongest. Ibadan were the two strongest. I'm not going to talk about the different wars. Now, torí gbogbo Amori àti nǹkan ogun tí Àfọ̀njá tó create ní Ìlọrin làwọn Alimi inherit. The fighting force, the fighting styles, everything. In fact, many ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn ọba nígbòmínà that used to be under the Oyo Empire, that used to be subjected to the Oyo Empire, that used to be down later on, what to renege, one support the Àfọ̀njá, that used to be under Àfọ̀njá, they just switched side and they joined the army of the Ilorins led by Alimi and his son, especially his son. Oh my God, ló tiẹ̀ wá lead the ogun yẹn. Ṣọ́rọ̀ mi yé, Shita and co. So tí ẹ bá rí gbogbo, so torí ẹ̀ ní the Ilorin army was a Yoruba speaking army. Torí ẹ̀ ní tẹ́ bá lọ wo Clapperton, ìwé Clapperton. Tẹ́ bá lọ wo, it was Samuel Johnson ló bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí sọ àwọn Fulani. Samuel Johnson, we can criticize Samuel Johnson's. I criticize Samuel Johnson's some of his stories a lot, especially the history of Yoruba people where we are from Mecca. That's àwọn Fulani narrative nìyẹn. Tí Sultan Bello tó sẹ́yìn sí Ìlọrin tán fẹ́ pass sí all over Yoruba land. That's not true. Or pé gbogbo àwọn no. Or it was the Fulani army. It was not the Fulani army. It was the Yoruba army. It was the Yoruba army. But until Ilorin create, Ilorin create in tó ń pè ní a Yorubanized Islamic city-state. A puritanical Islamic Yoruba city-state. Bí Sultan Usman Dan Fodio ṣe create an Hausa-speaking Fulani empire ní northern Nigeria. That was the ambition of Alimi, to create a Yoruba-speaking Islamic empire led by the Fulanis south of the Niger. That is why till date, the Fulanis, the Ilorins, see themselves as a custodian of Islam in Yoruba land. That is why you see places like Iwo, places like Ekpe, places like Ishayin, fighting back and saying this is not true. You cannot be the custodian, and we cannot be a custodian of Islam in Yoruba land. So I don't understand this psyche, Lonnie. But you don't know. So there are more geopolitical ambition. You must understand it, you must know it, so that you can know how to tackle them. Geopolitical ambition, Badon. Geopolitical ambition, Badon, is that they created a Republican empire. Because that was when Ibadan stopped listening and cut off their laughing totally. And Ibadan became its own a short-lived Republican empire. It's an empire. It was an empire. That was the only last empire of the Yoruba people. It was forged in blood and iron. We don't pray for such empire anymore because it was built on the destruction of our fellow Yorubas. But advantage Ibadan ni pé Ibadan la fi crush Ilorin, and to stop Ilorin from becoming a nuisance to the rest of us and destroying Yoruba civilization and replacing it with Islamic civilization. That was what saved the civilization of the Yoruba people. Because of that battle of 1840. So much one important events. So Ibadan was the successor state to the Oyo Empire. Because defensive, but that is the most powerful force. was the most powerful force. And it was an Oyo-speaking empire. At point in time, Ogunmola was still pro-Oyo. Well, Aláàfin and everything. At a point in time, Látọ̀ Ṣàgé ogun ẹ̀dànù. Tó fi di pé Aláàfin Adéyẹmí Alówólójú was now writing letters to the British to come and stop the Ibadan army, and even also supporting the embargo so that Ibadan will not be able to get access to war and ammunition again. Because what Ibadan was trying to do was to use force of arms to be able, for its own, it wants to be at the center, just like what Macedonia did to Greece. But we should not be using war as a means of unification. So during this period, Ibadan was the centerpiece.